Hi, my name's Jame, and welcome to day 14 of my Build a Day challenge. Yesterday, we built this alchemist's lab with a couple of big chimneys and whatnot. Um, Yesterday, I mentioned that these budding amethysts would create a lot of amethyst, and I was very much right. It is everywhere. But that was yesterday. Today, the plan is to continue building in this style, um, and I want to build some sort of cathedral-esque thing. Nothing too huge and grand, but definitely something that at least has some grandeur to it. And I'm planning on building it just here, with the intent of having a pathway from the fountain through here, and then leading into the entrance of the cathedral just here. Now, I do have a bit of a issue of that this area is starting to butt up against the savannah a little bit, which has not very good grass color compared to the forest, at least. So, luckily, I do have a bit of a border of how grand I can make this, but it wouldn't have been this big anyway. But yeah, I'm probably going to follow a similar theme as this sort of thing. Perhaps less of these white walls and perhaps more grey colors and that sort of thing. But I will pick a palette and then catch up in a sec. So you know what I said in the intro about making sure I don't go too big of a scale such that the savannah butts up against the build? Well, I went with a fairly big scale. I'm digging my own grave. But here we go. I've picked up the palette and also the general shape of the actual build. Similar foundation colors, just this grey gradient. Instead of using the calcite and white wool, I'm using quartz. It's a bit more of a pure white, so it infers that perhaps this is a more expensive build that's had more masonry put into it. Instead of using the blues and cyan colors for the roofs for the past two builds, I'm going to be focusing mainly on the purples and also these sort of crimson colors. These are both the crimson wood varieties. And instead of using wood for supports and stuff, I'm going to be using blackstone for that. My main purpose with this build is just to sort of lore-wise of the world, sort of show that this is a much more expensive and more effort was put into this build as far as the actual masonry, as I said, than these other two, and eventually perhaps probably some more around the place that are of similar style to this, but less expensive to this. So I've got a plan in my head on how this is actually going to go. I'm going to have two smaller spires in each of these sides, and then one main central spire up the center here. And this section here is going to be a little bit smaller, with a fairly steep roof, but the most of this will be a less steep roof. So we'll see how that goes. But what I'm going to start with now is probably just go straight into building the walls up around this, and then I'll check back in once that's done. Okay, update time. So I figured out the proportions, and I am screwed, basically. This is going to take me a long time, so I might not be able to get this as detailed as I would like, but I'm going to do my best. So I've got this smaller section here that's got, as I said, a much steeper roof that breaks off into this larger section with a significantly slimmer, or I guess less steep roof gradient. I might do something like this right at the end, just to bring it over a little bit, but I'm not too sure about that just yet. For now, just leave it like this. It won't be amethyst in the end, the actual roof. I'll probably be using more of the pure purples rather than using the amethyst itself, and I'll use the amethyst for the towers in on these two sides and in the back over here. Next, I'm just going to be filling in all of these walls. There's a lot of them, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to be detailing them. I've started doing some small sections, but it really does look incredibly flat at the moment. So I'm going to have to figure out some way to add some depth. That'll probably be in the form of blackstone and perhaps some other stair and slab varieties that I can think up. So I will check back in once I've figured that out. Okay. So I have uncovered the disappointing truth that this build is going to be more difficult than I had anticipated. I started putting in the walls, and none of it was tying together. So I tried putting in some of the roof, and that helps a lot. So it's like, okay, great. So I'm going to have to do the roof as well. And I had to fully change what I had here to get some depth into the build. And I'm putting in some of these archways along here. And basically, it just means that this is going to be a much bigger project than I had anticipated it was going to be, and probably not going to be able to get finished by the end of today. But what I've put in so far, I think is looking fairly nice after about an hour of trial and error. But it's getting there. It definitely still needs more color and depth through it, but it's better than it was before, that's for sure. But I think for now, I'm going to continue working on it, just doing odds and ends until I can start getting something that I think is coming together a little better. And then tomorrow, I'll pick up where I left off and continue along with it. But I will catch back in once I've done probably about another half hour of work and show you what I've been up to. Okay, so I've put the roof in, which has certainly helped develop the shape of what this build's actually going to be in the end. And I put in just a rough idea of where these towers are going to sit, with the largest one in the center at the back here. Still no walls in most of this, but I'm still not fully sure what I'm actually going to do with it. These walls. I will probably push them back in by one block, such that they're in sort of along this line along here. But this section through here, I'm not 100% sure about, but I do have time to work on that still. But yeah, this has taken me already about 2 hours, this much, and it's not even close to a finished build. Normally by this stage, I'm working on interiors and stuff, but haven't even finished the walls just yet. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so I've done a bit more work, tried to get everything done that I could before my patience ran out, which it now has. So it's a very much unfinished build so far. I put in some windows, so at least the walls are now pretty much at least sealed in for the most part. But the interior is far from done. The roof itself is currently just purple wool, and it's definitely going to be more than that. And these sides still don't look the greatest, but they're probably going to have to do, at least for the time being. So I think this will have to be it for today's episode. Tomorrow I will probably continue working on this and get this done, and maybe do another smaller build, but probably not. I'll probably just put all my effort into just trying to get this build finished all the way through. So I'll probably spend a while tomorrow putting in lots of details around the place, so it goes from being a very unfinished build to perhaps one of my most complete overall. But as I said, that's it for today's Build a Day challenge. Bit of a shame that I couldn't get it finished, but it is what it is. But as always, thank you very much.